heart. You may be seated.
After a few weeks of being virtual, so good to be back with you all. So good. Still looking forward to the days of COVID-free when we don't have to wear masks anymore. Won't that be nice? We can all be together. Glad you guys are here. Glad the folks at home are watching. Last couple weeks, if you noticed, we went backwards. Took a couple weeks to talk about some things earlier in Matthew that we left behind when we first went through this. We're now in chapter 6. And if you want to turn there, you can. We're going to begin in the first few verses. Jesus keeps challenging, as he loves to do, pushing us deeper, pushing us farther, making this life of discipleship an inward priority first. Real righteousness originates in the inward person. And Jesus gets to define what righteousness really looks like. Maybe you remember what he said earlier in this sermon. Unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you certainly will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So what does righteousness look like through Jesus' eyes? What does it not look like? Listen to Jesus. Be careful, verse 1, not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Be careful. Be warned. Beware. Take heed. Pay attention. Listen up. Here it comes. The intention of the heart must be intentionally scrutinized. Motivation matters. You may know what Jesus goes on to say. We're going to read it pretty quickly, but he'll speak of 3 different things that for the Jew of those days were foundational. They were core, central components to life. Giving, fasting, praying. We'll look at the first one today, the others later, but the motivation behind the actions is the bigger part, not just the actions. Then, of course, we'll practice our righteousness in front of others. The good Lord expects us to live our lives in front of others so they see it. We need to be salt and light, as he's already said. We need to influence others for the Lord. Our actions will reveal that, hopefully bring about that. Not their admiration of us, but of the Lord. What audience are we seeking? I'll ask that later too. That's the question of the day. What audience are we seeking? If you want applause for what you do, who is giving the applause? If someone is handing out some attaboys and way to go, girl, who's giving that? Where is the praise originating? If you get an award from one person or one group, who gives the award? If you're seeking the reward of some on earth, then congratulations, you'll get it. But you won't get it from God because he knows the heart. Pay attention to the motives because he is focusing on your intention. He watches what you are seeking. So watch what you are doing. So, for example, when it comes to giving, how should we give? Jesus says. So when you give to the needy, don't announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Giving can be done in a lot of ways. It can be done in the most obvious way. Giving can even become a stage show where all eyes are on the giver and everybody there watches it, and all they're left with is oohs and ahs. Wow. Could Jesus have really meant some rich folks were blowing trumpets or having trumpets blown so everybody could see that they're giving? It's possible. There's no real example of that anywhere else than what he's saying here. So probably not, but some believe it. Jack Lewis says it's probably more of this metaphorical expression, like we would say it's tooting your own horn. You know what that looks like, don't you? We all know how to do that. Mike Cope wonders what it would be like if you remember the old days when we used to pass this plate across and people would put that, remember that? We used to put money in the collection plate. We don't do that anymore, haven't for a long time. But can you imagine as that plate goes past a row and music starts blaring as each person puts some money in. He says the plate comes to one brother, puts in a very large check, and we hear a trumpet fanfare ending with a crash of cymbals. It passes to the lady right next to him, and we get a French horn salute. Now someone puts in another big check, and a tuba bellows out. The plate comes to a college student, and he observes the Passover, silence. Next it comes to a little girl. She drops in a dime, and we hear a little flute in the background. I wonder if music played with each gift, depending on the amount given, if it might change the way we give. If you knew today the music would be relating to how much you gave, maybe next week you'd bring more, because it can push us. This accolades of others can push us to give, not so much to give, but to hear people applaud our giving. McGee was an old preacher, and he wrote this. There was a man in my church, he said, always gave me a check before I went up into the pulpit to preach. He thought it would excite me enough so I would mention his check. A friend of his came to me to tell me later that week how the man was disturbed that his large check was not even acknowledged last Sunday. Oh, that's right, I said, that's right. Your friend is a man of means, and the check he gave me in relation to what he has wasn't really very much. Last Sunday, a mail carrier also handed me an envelope. He didn't even want me to open it till after the service and didn't want me to say a word about it to anybody else. He gave me almost twice as much money as your friend gave. If I was going to acknowledge somebody, he says, it would have been the mail carrier, but he didn't want me to. He goes on to say, giving is between you and God, and the very minute you get a third party involved, you don't get any credit from heaven. I also remember as a young man serving communion in our church building, and I was pretty young, but I remember we would get to the back after the collection plates were passed. We'd put them all together, and somebody like a Kevin Laws would take it back and start counting it. I remember on a few occasions there was an older gentleman who would come to us in the back of the auditorium, and he'd be waving his $100 bill. And he would say, here, I need to make some change. And I don't remember now, besides him waving that, I don't remember how much he actually gave and how much change he wanted. And I guess if it had happened one time, I would have thought, he's in a pinch. I get it. Everybody has trouble sometimes. But he did that on enough occasions for me to wonder, even to this day, what he was doing. I don't know his heart. It may have been pure as the driven snow. I don't know. But the question really isn't how much do you give? The harder question for you to answer is, why do you give? Why do you help people? Why do you share, give to the poor? Why do you offer what you have to somebody else? And Jesus here, I don't think is accusing. He's not pointing fingers saying, you are terrible. He's pointing out the negative, the hypocrisy of some, and saying, now you don't do that. You avoid that. All those who do that. Don't do like them. Do it right. Give it generously. Give it to honor God and help others, and that's all. Giving is such a good thing to do. You should give. Help the poor. Take care of folks. Share what God has given you. But the problem is even our giving, which can be pure, can be corrupted by me, by us. The problem is what we give can be tainted by our selfishness and our sin. I can desire your praise more than God's glory. Wiersbe says our sinful nature is so subtle it can defile even a good thing like sharing something with the poor. I have a 6-year-old in our home. You probably know who she is. Last night I was shaving. She will go unmentioned. I was shaving in the mirror as she was taking a bath right next to me, and she was trying to break her record in the tub of holding her breath underwater. She was doing a great job. But she kept saying this to me. Maybe you've heard it if you're a parent. I've got 3 girls now, so I've heard it many times. It sounds something like this. Hey, Dad, watch this. Hey, watch this. Watch this. Are you watching? Watch what I'm doing. Watch. Are you watch this. Hey, watch what I'm doing. I don't know how many times I've heard that in my lifetime, but it's a lot. Harris says it's not nearly as much fun if nobody is watching. We grow older, and we don't always grow out of that. Even as adults, we find it more fun to perform for those who are watching. Adults aren't immune to that, and neither are religious adults. We all have this desire for people to watch what we're doing. Kierkegaard pointed out some Christians have this fallacy in their thinking. And that is that we sit in a place like this during worship and the one who stands up here performs for you. Wrong. We are all today as church performing for one. One. An audience of one today. This isn't for you, and that's not for me. This is for God. Hypocrites have their priorities mixed up. They don't give for the poor. They don't give for the glory of God. They give for the applause of others, so people will notice. Jesus says if they want to be honored by others, there you go. You want the applause of others? You got it. And that's all you're getting. But you are to be different. You follow in the steps of Jesus. Act differently. Live differently. Give differently. You are to become an undercover giver. Don't watch if people notice. Don't ask for their applause. Don't even pay attention whether they're noticing you. Just give. Give and don't pay attention to the giving. Just give quietly, secretly, expecting nothing in return. God will handle that later. Jesus speaks in hyperbole as he loves to do. Don't even let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. He's not saying separate your hands, pay attention to which hand is getting. He's saying don't even worry about it. Don't even think about it. Just give it. God is watching. God is keeping track. God is paying attention. God is adding things up and totaling. He's got the tally sheet. He knows what's been done. And more than that, He knows the intention of the heart. How do you give? Jesus tells us. What does it look like? Looks like this. This is true righteousness. Crane says, true righteousness avoids the empty outward show of doing religious activities that are divorced from a sincere heart. Deeds should not be performed before men so they will be noticed by them. Instead, they should be done from devoted hearts to honor and glorify God. If righteous acts are not performed out of love for God and one's fellow man, then they become null and void. It's not that every gift has to be done secretly or it's wrong. It's that the manner and motive of the heart are what makes the gift right. When I hear stories of giving, it does my heart good. This week I've been reading some, and sometimes I even get teary-eyed reading them or saying them. Amanda Thomason reported back in November about the Thomas family. They live in Atlanta, Georgia. On Halloween, everybody comes to their neighborhood. Their neighborhood loves to host so many people. 300 or 400 kids can come to that neighborhood. This year was a little different for the Thomas family because they are consumed with one thing, and that is their child's fight with cancer. So they didn't want to inconvenience anybody. They didn't want any kid to be disappointed who might have come up to the front door and rang the doorbell and said, no candy. So they put a sign in the front door that said, sorry, no candy. Child with cancer, sign. And they were curious. Later they went outside to see what was happening, and they were shocked because underneath the sign was a pile of candy. They took a picture, posted it online. They said the picture doesn't even do it justice. There's a lot of candy and the good stuff even. And she said, seriously, if the parents of anybody who did this, please tell them how much it means to us. She wrote, on the best candy night of the year, kids freely and generously shared with strangers and showed so much love and kindness. So amazing, she said, I can't stop crying. If anyone thought there was no hope in our kids and teens, you're wrong. It's just candy. But the motivation of the heart melts the hardest heart. We sometimes think of giving and immediately we jump to money because people need money. Of course they do. But there are other things that show people love and help them and give them some support along the way. So if you think of money and think of giving and jump right to money, okay. But there are plenty of other things you can give to people who really are in need. Just this week, reading about the genuine gratitude of some folks who'd received bone marrow or a kidney or a vital organ from somebody who had recently died. I loved reading those stories. It made me emotional. It's not just money. It's the giving and the receiving of an incredible gift given in love. If you get a chance to give, give. Give what helps people. If it's money, good. But anything else might be even better. Fred Craddock talks about his family and how poor they were when he was younger. He said some women came from a local church. He names them, the Central Avenue Christian Church. He said they came to our house and they brought him a pair of Buster Brown shoes that fit. And he said they were so nice and I could now go to Sunday school. And he said, those women didn't just bring me a pair of shoes. You know what else they brought me? They brought me a picture book of the stories about Jesus. I needed the shoes. I really needed those stories. Whatever is given, the point is that it is given for the good of the receiver and the glory of God. That's what Jesus is getting at. No need to show anybody. No need to keep track. No reason to say, are you watching? Lloyd Jones interprets Jesus' words. Don't keep the mental books in your head. Don't keep spiritual ledgers. Don't keep profit and loss accounts in your life. Don't write a diary in the sense. Just forget about it. Do things as you are moved by God and led by the Holy Spirit. Then forget about them. We should have such a love of God that we have no time to think about ourselves. We shall never get rid of self by concentrating on self. The only hope is to be so consumed by love that we have no time to think about ourselves. This is about others, not about ourselves. This is about God and what He desires. This is about those who need the love of God and the help of those who say they love the Lord and are willing to help. This is about sharing what the good Lord has shared with us first. John and I, over the years, have been blessed by so many, impossible to count them all, in all the years. I sometimes think like, what if I made a list of every person who's ever given me or us something? And I think how long that would be. The blessings that have come to us in so many different ways, so many good gifts, a note, a phone call, a meal, a gift card, a birthday cake, a night out at a restaurant, a picture, a Christmas card, a birthday card, an anniversary card, a kind gesture, some cookies or candy, some words of appreciation, a text, a thoughtful act, a simple hello or thank you. I could not tell you how many times people have been good to us, and many of you have too. Blessed beyond measure, grateful for every gift, thankful even that I don't know who all gives around here, but I know sometimes people give to others, even some folks who need it in this church. And just recently, I know some of you were the givers and some of you were the recipients. Some generous families, some individuals gave to some folks who they thought could use it, and they did. And to hear some of those people talk, just saying, thank you to this church. They thanked the church, and some of us had nothing to do with that. Even with Joy of Giving, who knows how many people actually helped, gave, supported, prayed, loved. I think at the end of that day, I would love to think at the end of that day, when some of those folks drove home, they didn't know our names. They may not even remember this church's name, but hopefully they will just say, thank you, God, for people like that who give. I want you to be good to people, all people. Be good to all people, but especially to those in the household of faith, Paul says in Galatians. Be good to the poor and the needy. Maybe it's with somebody you see on a street corner. Maybe it's a family. Maybe it's a friend of a family. Maybe it's somebody you just know personally who's struggling. Coworker, fellow student, family at church, neighbor down the road, stranger that crossed your path, somebody you hear about in foster care, in a conversation, through an acquaintance. Almost doesn't matter who they are or what they need or how you help. It's just that you are doing what the good Lord is asking. Give, share, bless, love, help. And the key is, don't do it to be noticed by people. Once you put it on Facebook, that's all you get. Everybody sees it and knows it, and that's all you get. If nobody in the world knows it, God knows it, and He rewards in due time. If you want to know how to give, the best way to give is secretly. The secret givers get the best rewards. Try it. Let the Lord see it, and let Him be the one who takes note of it and blesses you because of it. It's not wrong to give when people know it. It's not wrong to give when the recipient knows it. But just let it be between you and God. Let the gifts speak for themselves. Let the Lord be honored by the giving. In this new year, determined to be a giver, a sharer, a funnel of grace. Best you can, keep it under cover, covert, secretive. No need to toot your own horn or make a show or invite others to watch. Just do it. You are serving and worshiping and living and giving for an audience of just one. And He is always watching, and He will be rewarding for all the good that's been done for His glory in this lifetime. Let's get to giving. Let's stand and sing.